I'm Barry Loveland. I'm an oral history interviewer with the LGBT Center of Central Pennsylvania History Project. And I'm here with Lana Malmsheimer, who is our videographer. Today is October 13th, 2014, and we're here to interview James Bortzfield at the LGBT Center in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Jim, do I have your permission to interview you today and videotape the interview?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And then we have a consent form that I'll ask you to sign at the end of the interview, as I mentioned to you before, at which time you can place any restrictions on any parts of the interview if you want. Also, let me assure you that if you want to stop and take a break during the interview, we can do that. Mm-hmm. Anytime you want to decline to answer any question, that's mm-hmm. fine as well. So just let me know. All right, if you could state and spell your full name, first of all, and then we'll ask about your growing up and so forth.
My full name is James, James, okay. Nevin, Nevin, Bortzfield, Bortzfield.
Great, okay. Could you tell us when and where you were born and raised?
I was born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in Manheim Township.
Okay.
I went to Manheim Township High School, graduated in 1952.
What year were you born?
1934.
Okay, good. Tell me a little bit about growing up. What was your family life like? Did you have siblings?
I had a brother. Okay. He died when he was 62, in 1991. I had a wonderful family. Both my mother and my father and all my relatives we were very close. They're all gone now.
What did your parents do for a living, or?
My father was in the confectionery business. He ran Keppel's Incorporated in Lancaster. He was president of the Pennsylvania Candy Manufacturers Association for many, many years.
And your mother?
My mother was, at that time, home wife. You know, mm-hmm. She just stayed home and took care of the house.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. And what was school like for you? Did you know you were gay then, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
I knew when I was 11.
Really?
And met a lot of boys in school at that time.
Who you knew were gay, or?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. And I knew, and a lot of the straight boys too. They went out with me.
Really?
It was fun. I had no problems at all.
Well, tell me more about what that was like, what your school life was like. Were you involved in any activities, or?
I was on the basketball team. Oh. And I was also, one year I was the manager of the basketball team, which just was a nothing job. But it was just to be around my friends that were on the team. Mm-hmm. And we used to have wonderful times together.
Well, tell me more about that.
Well, just the normal high school life. And the only difference was we'd go to dances, we'd have dates, go to movies, go to dances and all. But then when that was all over, after you took the girl home, you met up with whoever you had a date with later on and proceeded that way.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. So how did you sort of figure out that other guys in school were maybe interested or whatever? Did they have certain signals, or?
They picked me out.
Did they?
Yes, they did. I was one of the few boys that had a car. There were 3 of us out of 150 people in the senior class, but I was one that had a car. And they always said, "Would you take me home after a game or something like that? Would you take me home?" I said, "Sure, I'll take you home. You want to stop and have coffee first or something, you know?" And it was very easy. It was almost too easy.
Well, that's pretty interesting. Did you have any sense of sort of gay life outside of school?
Not until I was 15 or 16. When I was 16, then I wandered into downtown Lancaster, and somebody said, you should go in the Village Tavern. And I said, what's that? It's a gay bar. So, ooh, we have a club, you know. So I went in there, and the Village Tavern in Lancaster at that time was part of a nightclub, and it was also the Greyhound bus station. Yeah. And being that Lancaster was close to the naval base down in Maryland, they used to have a choice of going to, the sailors used to have a choice of, on the weekend leave, of going to Lancaster or Philadelphia, and a lot of them came up from, it was Bainbridge, they came from Bainbridge. And those boys liked to party too.
And so where was the Village Tavern in Lancaster? Do you know?
It was right behind the Brunswick Hotel.
Okay.
The old Brunswick Hotel, but the same location, but it's the old Brunswick Hotel.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay. That was your first kind of place that you came out to, I guess,
yes.
or whatever you started going
yes.
out to.
Mm-hmm.
Were there other places that you eventually started going to, or?
Yes. When I was in high school, I had a very good bass voice. I was in the choir, I did solo work, and my parents sent me to Philadelphia, to Lester Englander's for voice lessons. And he was Mad Queen, you know, but we never did anything together, and he never came out to me, and I never came out to him, but it was very, very obvious. And after I had heard words of rumors of some of the clubs, and one was the Pirate Ship in Philadelphia. The bar went through from one street to another. The first half you walked through the straight section, and then you opened the door and you went into the gay section.
Wow.
So that was the first gay bar I was in. And then I went to some other ones and got thrown out of 2 of them because I was at that time only 16. So, but I looked older, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting.
So I knew there was life outside of Lancaster,
yeah.
even at that age.
Yeah,
you know.
that's pretty amazing. Did you go to college or anything after school?
I went to Franklin and Marshall for 2 years, and I was in a geology course there, and I didn't do well in mathematics, and I didn't want to pursue it, and I just wanted to switch to business. And Elizabethtown College had a professor there. His name was Gray. He was excellent, so I transferred to Elizabethtown, and I went there for 2 years, and that's where I graduated from.
And your major, or your?
I had a business major.
Business major.
Yeah. But,
Right. And so, were you aware in college of any sort of LGBT?
I was
or?
not very active in college. I was very careful because for 2 years I lived in a dormitory there, and I didn't want to arouse too much suspicion. When you're that close to people, you know, when you have to sleep in the same building with them, it's a little different, you know. Right. But then I started commuting between Lancaster and Elizabethtown. Every day I had to drive up there to school. And then I'd pick up one, maybe I knew a couple other guys in college, you know, that were gay, and would throw them in the car and we'd drive up to Harrisburg to the Clock Bar.
Oh, okay. And what year was that, do you think?
Pardon? What?
About what year was that? That
would have been 1956.
Wow. Wow.
Because I moved to Harrisburg. When I graduated from college, I was hired by Pomeroy's. They sent a human resources man to the college to hire people. And they hired me in the executive training program, and I trained to be, 6 months I was a buyer, going to New York every other week to buy. Oh. And that started in 1957. So.
So what was Harrisburg like in the 1950s for gay people?
What was
Harrisburg like in the 1950s for gay people?
Well, there were plenty of them around. I mean, the Clock Bar was always busy on weekends. You could not dance, but there were tables in the back, and it was a great place to meet people. Mm-hmm. And if you didn't like that, you could go to Johnny Kobler's. And if you didn't like that, you could go to the Warner, the old Warner Hotel bar. Mm-hmm. And there were other bars that you could meet people, and it's not like you really were into bars and drinking and all, but that's where you went to meet people. Mm-hmm. Either there or the State Diner, which was catty-corner across the street from the Clock Bar. Mm-hmm. And then there was always State Street. Mm-hmm. And then the bars closed at midnight. That's before they could be open till 1 o'clock and then 2 o'clock. Right. So a lot of people had after the hours parties at their houses, mm-hmm. and there might be 10 or 15 people that would go, and that's where you really met people and had a really good time. It was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So could you maybe describe some of the bars that you attended a little bit? Because we're trying to sort of get some better sense of what the bars were like. For instance, the Clock Bar. Could you maybe talk a little bit about what that was like?
It was, it's very hard to describe. It was just another bar. I mean, okay. Along the walls were clocked. It was called the Clock Bar because they had clocks on the wall set to different time zones around the world, in Moscow, London, that's why it was called the Clock Bar. Okay. The Dares owned it. Uh-huh. The Dare family owned it. And it was straight owned and straight bartenders, but they were very friendly and very welcoming, and it was no problem at all. Mm-hmm.
And do you know when that sort of became a gay bar?
No, I do not.
Okay.
And I don't think anyone knows really when it was. In the 30s, I think it originally started. It
opened in 1938. I was able to trace it back through the various business directories. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't sure if it was immediately gay or if mm-hmm. it eventually became gay. So, mm-hmm. yeah.
I never saw a straight person in there. Never. Now at the Warner Hotel, that was different. That was some of the guests that would stay at the hotel would wander into the bar, mm-hmm. but the bartenders were gay. Okay. So, and Johnny Kobler's was another straight bar, and the gays stayed in the back along the side, but we were welcomed there too. I mean, there was never a problem there.
And where was Johnny Kobler's?
Kobler's was back in the alley right across from where the jail was. The jail and Kobler's, that building, that's now occupied by the parking garage.
Okay, all right.
If you go back that little, what is that alley, Blueberry? Or it's the alley next to the City Hall.
Okay, yeah.
I forget the name of that alley.
Yeah.
But if you go up there to the next intersection, it was on the corner there, but it's underneath the parking garage.
Okay, all right. Mm-hmm. Interesting. And the Warner Hotel, do you have any other sense about what that was like inside? Do you remember anything about it?
It was fairly run down. They used to have a plaque out front that Mark Twain stayed here or somebody stayed here. It's historical, so you can know the date of it. It was probably built around the turn of the century. Right. It was a wooden frame hotel outside. It was clapboard. I don't know when it was torn down. Yeah. But,
okay. And then, how about coming out to your family?
Never.
Never?
I never came. And it was never an issue. They never brought it up. I never brought it up. I didn't think I had to. I knew that they knew. One sister-in-law made a smart comment. Said, I think Jim's queer. And my mother said, it's really none of your business, And as long as I was successful in business and could support myself, they had no problem with it. Never did.
Yeah.
I was very lucky that way. Mm-hmm.
So once you started at Pomeroy's, how long did you stay there?
I was there 7 years.
Okay.
And I worked with a man there the manager of the men's department was Earl Brandt, who left there and bought Brandt Distributors. And then when he left, I said, Earl, I got to get out of here. I hate retailing. I said, if you know of a small beer distributorship for sale somewhere, let me know. 2 months later, he called me and he said, Ernie Accorsi and Hershey wants to sell Triple. He said, do you want to buy it? I said, yes. He says, go down and see Melvin Keckler. He's the real estate agent down there. And they told me what they wanted for it, which was reasonable, you know, and I ended up being a beer distributor in Hershey till 1972.
Okay. And during this time, did you end up like meeting any partner or anybody special in your life that you developed a relationship with?
Oh yes, in 1969 I met my first serious lover in a movie theater. And this person I was asking you about, Howard Rowland, I was with him at the movies, and I said, who is that sitting down there? He said, that's Kelly. I said, really? I said, can you introduce me? He said, yes. And we went to a party, I was introduced to him, and we were lovers for many, many years. We're still friends. He's 71, he lives in Tucson, and we call each other at least every other week.
Wow, that's great.
But he's the only one true person in my life.
How long were you together with him?
From 1969 till 1981 or 82.
Wow, that was a long time.
And then his eyes started wandering, you know, like, he must have gotten bored.
Okay. Well, in 1972, is that when you decided to get into the gay bar business? Or
yes.
yes.
Yeah.
You started Neptune
after working every day from 9 to 9, you know, and then not having anything to do for a while. I asked Kelly, I said, you know, I'm sitting on this money. I said, I got to do something. This is terrible just sitting around. So I called Earl Brandt again. And I said, Earl, I want to buy a bar. And he says, I have just the bar for you. Bob Maley wants to sell. I said, oh, the Neptune. He said, yeah. I said, it's awfully small. He says, but the price is cheap. He says, a place to start. You got to start somewhere. I said, okay, let's go. And we opened in December.
So was it already called the Neptune?
It was already called the Neptune. It was named after Bob Maley's speedboat. He used to have a speedboat out of Wormleysburg.
Okay.
Yeah, and I never changed the name. I didn't see the purpose of changing it.
Yeah.
You know,
so it used to be a straight bar as
very.
Neptune.
Yeah, very.
Okay.
Capital workers and.
Okay. So how was the transition to suddenly change it to a gay bar? Was it difficult to try to get the clientele? Or?
Kelly was my bartender.
Okay.
And the other bartender you would know, but I don't know whether I can mention his name. I can mention it off.
Sure.
When we're, you know. But the first day we were open was a Saturday. And there weren't that many straight people around anyway. And the word spread right away that it was a gay bar. That Monday, after the state left out, the crowd used to come, they came in, Mary and her friend, and a couple of the guys, a couple of attorneys and all, and they sat at the bar and they looked at me and they said, when are your people coming in? And I said, probably as soon as you people leave. You know, and they laughed and they kept coming in for a couple of years.
Wow.
At happy hour, you know, from 4 to 6 or something like that, that stop in.
So what did you enjoy? Obviously you enjoyed doing this for a living. It's something you enjoyed.
I did then. I would never do it again, but I did then because I lived there.
Yeah.
I often learn from the Greeks when they're always successful in the restaurant business because they live there. They don't let other people run it. and you have to watch what's going on. You got to watch the money. I sat behind the cash register every day. I opened up every day at 4 o'clock, and I'd usually go home and take a nap like at 9 or 10 o'clock, and I'd go back and close at 2 in the morning. We'd get out of there at 2:30, then go across the river to the diner or to Bob's Big Boy for breakfast and get home at 4:30, and the next day turn around and do it all over again.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, and I was never tired or anything. I mean, it just, you can do that when you're in your 40s and 50s.
So what were some of the more memorable moments for you in the bar? I mean, once you...
The people.
Yeah.
That was the best part of it, meeting all the people. There's so many wonderful, wonderful people that, you know, and then of course there's a lot of them that don't even go out to the bars, but I met so many nice people. And the parties that we had, and
you had like a number of special events throughout the year?
We had, yeah, we had always, we never had a Christmas party at that bar. All the other bars were open Christmas, and I was always against that. So we'd open for happy hour, and from 4 o'clock till 6 o'clock. And we'd have an open bar, and we might get 20, 25 people, and then they were all invited up to my house at 6 o'clock. And we'd put out a spread for him. Kelly would cook it and all. He was a wonderful cook. And we did that every Christmas. I was never open Christmas night. Or Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve, yeah.
I said, let the other bars make the money. You know, that was my night off. But we had theme parties, of course, military parties. You've seen the pictures.
Yes.
And Halloween parties, and New Year's was always, we always were the only bar that didn't have an open door policy. You had to buy a ticket to get in ahead of time. We only sold 100 tickets. That's it. And it was open bar. So you didn't have to bring any money. And it was only $10. I think the last one we had, we raised it to 12. Or something, which was a buy, because you got free champagne, you got food, you got breakfast.
So were there other good memories of like certain characters that you recall from the bar? I mean, you don't have to mention like their specific names, but you could maybe talk a little bit about the different people that you saw all the time, your regulars and so forth?
There were regulars that came in that were entertaining. One, Frank, with the tambourine, and every time some Spanish music would come on the jukebox, he always played the tambourine, and everybody remembers Tambourine Frank. And we had to have maracas behind the bar too for him. He was the oldest person in the bar. He was 64. Wow. He used to work at the Patriot News. And he was just a wonderful guy. And there were some other local pharmacists and so on that used to come in every night after work, you know, and they were just nice people.
I remember Wesley.
Oh, Wesley.
Yeah.
Benjamin Troutwine.
Yes.
Wesley was one of my best friends. He lived right across the street from me from 608 when I lived at 608 North 2nd. He lived catty corner with his mother and Dennis. He had, every dog he had was called Dennis. They were all black. Isn't that awful? I can't think of the... Anyway.
They were a small dog. Yeah.
Everybody knew Dennis. The firemen, when the firemen were in the firehouse next to me, he was friends with all the firemen there. And he used to tell stories of going back in the firehouse, you know, but I don't know whether they were true or whether he was just exaggerating.
But he would, I understand he would like take a taxi up to...
He would take a taxi up there.
Up to the bar?
The taxi drivers all knew him. And he usually got a free ride. But he tipped them. And then he took a taxi home too. He always wore a suit, blue suit with a tie, was always dressed, always made up. He came to a party one night, at John Koch's house. John Koch had a party. I don't know whether it was a New Year's Eve party or what, but Wesley showed up. He was invited. They didn't think he'd come, and he showed up, and he looked exactly like Marlene Dietrich. And if you ever saw him, you could see how that is, because he looked like, even without makeup, he looked like Marlene Dietrich. Mm-hmm. He originally did shows in New Orleans. He used to reminisce about all those shows and all. He was a good-hearted person.
Mm-hmm. Any other characters you can think of that were
not really any that really stand out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mentioned Calvin before, that danced a lot in the bar. You recall?
But he was the real exception. I mean, he was the only one that, he was really a standout. Most everybody else was just normal mm-hmm. people off the street. I mean,
right.
You know, that's what made him exceptional. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember the bar always seemed to be very crowded because it was a very narrow bar, so you had to go through and everything. And you had a separate room that had the dance floor, correct?
Well, that came later on.
Okay.
We expanded next door, and then expanded into the restaurant. I bought the Capitol Grill, and
that you renamed that the Paper Moon.
That was Paper Moon.
Yeah.
But that Paper Moon was after when I had it. It was Key Largo.
Okay.
It started as Key Largo, and then when Frank bought the bar, it changed. Stephen changed the name to Paper Moon because he named it after a restaurant he used to go to in Georgetown, in Washington.
So why did you decide to sell the bar?
I had enough of it.
Yeah.
It was just you get to the point where there has to be a better life than this, you know. And the smoke was getting to bother me. I tried to stop smoking. I was a chain smoker. I mean, a horrible chain smoker. 2 cartons a week. That's way too much. And the Great Smoke Out of 1983, I think it was. I had a cold anyway, and I finally stopped cold turkey. And I said, I can't stay in this bar being a non-smoker, you know. And so that's, and
so what year did you end up selling it?
Yep.
Which year? What year?
You know, I'm really not sure. I think it was 84.
Okay.
It was either 84 or 85.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. And my paperwork is tucked away way down south, so I'm really not sure.
Okay. What did you do after that?
I didn't do anything for 4 years, and then I decided to move to Florida.
Okay.
I took a couple trips down there, and I said, wow, this is for me, I should have done this 10 years ago. And I've been there ever since. I moved there in 1988.
Did you work down there?
Yes, I did. I got there, and I got tired of going to the beach every day after about 3 months, and I thought I better look for a part-time job. So I went to an agency, and they got me a job at a bank, and I hated it. And a week later, I went in and I said, don't you have something better than this? And they said, Blockbuster's hiring. And I said, well, at the corporate office. The corporate office was down there. And so I went to work for them in facilities management, which included payroll and mailing out, getting mail in, and it actually was just a glorified mailroom. But I was the supervisor there, and we were responsible for mailing out the whole payroll for 35,000 people and doing all the accounts payable checks and printing all that, and it was quite extensive. They moved to Dallas in 1998, and they wanted me to go with them, and I didn't want to leave Fort Lauderdale. So I took my severance and bought a condominium, and I'm still there.
Okay. And when you moved down to Florida, did you get involved at all in the gay life in the Fort Lauderdale area?
I was.
Yeah.
I was. I wasn't in the gay chorus, or I didn't go to the gay church, the Sunshine Cathedral, but I was in the gay bars a lot, the club life.
So what was it like there?
And I had a lot of gay friends. A lot of them are gone, and I don't go out much anymore. I just pretty much stay home and visit friends of mine. That's about it.
So what was the gay life like in Fort Lauderdale when you got there?
When I got there, pretty extraordinary. I mean, we have their own beach and plenty of places to go, and very easy to meet people. And of course, I've always lived in Wilton Manors, and that's the center of gay life on the East Coast. And at least we think so, you know. And I mean, there's the town I live in there's 11,000 people, and it's like 60% gay. And it's very upscale. Not where I live in my little condominium, but the houses and all. I mean, they're quite expensive, and so the people there are really, really nice. It's a nice place to live. Nice place to retire.
So now you're fully retired?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I retired when I was 64.
Okay. And do you have like interests or things that you do now?
I still have my piano, my grand piano, my Yamaha, which I bought here in Harrisburg in 1969, and it's traveled with me everywhere.
Wow.
I have that. I love photography, but mainly music. I'm an opera buff.
Okay.
And the greatest thing that ever happened was the Metropolitan Opera HD broadcasts. And we have 3 theaters within 10 miles of where I live. You know, and there's 3 friends of mine who are also opera buffs. If some Wagnerian opera's playing in Amsterdam, which it was last year, they flew to Amsterdam. They just fly around the world to follow the opera. Well, we go together to see them, and it's good. It's good.
So do you travel much as well? Or
No, I don't. I don't know. I'm not a good traveler.
Okay.
I've only been here a week, and I'm homesick already. I'm leaving a day early. I'm leaving Wednesday to go back instead of Thursday. I just miss it so much.
Yeah.
I miss the heat.
Okay. Can you think of anything else? Please do.
When you owned the bar, the Neptune.
I can't hear.
Okay.
When you owned the Neptune,
When you own the Neptune,
Yes.
did people organize other kinds of activities there?
did people organize any other kinds of activities there?
I don't understand the question.
Political activities
was-
or volleyball or whatever?
Were there any like?
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Now I understand. No, other people from outside organized the volleyball, and then they'd come in. Would you buy us a volleyball? So and we'd donate them. But we never originated any of that in the bar itself. Which today you would do that, and I would do it. It was a real oversight then. We should have done it. Like the bars in Fort Lauderdale, each bar has its own baseball team. Each bar has its own volleyball team. They have golf teams. They have bowling teams. I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
And it's something we never thought of doing.
Right.
You know.
It's the worst thing you had to handle.
What's the worst thing you had to handle in terms of being a bar owner? Did you have any
worst thing?
Yeah, any incidents or any kind of problems that you dealt with?
just keeping order. I never had a really serious incident there. Mm-hmm. You have people that have too much to drink and do crazy things, mm-hmm. you know, but I never really had, I think in the time I had the bar, I only had to throw 2 people out, or bar 2 people. Mm. Most people behaved themselves pretty well. Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the relationship with the police and so forth, you didn't have any issues?
In all the time I had the bar, the police were only called 1 time. Mm-hmm. And they stopped at the door, met me, and they said, if we come in there, we're going to have to make an arrest. We don't come in unless we make an arrest. I said, we'll take care of the problem ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I never saw them again. Okay. And I was never harassed. Mm-hmm. It was too easy. Mm-hmm. I had a neighbor that had a problem with the noise. Mr. Weber, he was the building right next to the bar, Weber's Beauty Shop. And his wife was lovely. His son was really a nice guy too. But Mr. Weber came over one day and he said, you know, the noise here at night is very loud. And I said, well, there's not much I can do about it. You know, he said, well, he moved. He did. Mm-hmm. You know, in about 3 months he was gone, sold the building. Mm-hmm. He's the only person I had ever had any words about. Mm-hmm. But even that was not a serious problem.
Right. Okay. Let me think. You were never in the military, right?
No.
Okay.
I missed it. Uh-huh. I went with my friends, and my eyes were so bad, they thought I was lying, and they had an eye surgeon come in and check my eyes, and he said, no, he really is almost blind in his left eye. And so I was rejected. I was 4F.
Okay.
I was very disappointed at the time, because all my buddies went.
Did you have any like organizational affiliations or things that you got involved with, kind of civic stuff?
No.
No. Okay. All right. How about any religious life? Did you go to church at all, or?
When I was young, up until the time that I moved to Harrisburg, when I was going into college and when I was living there, I used to drive to Lancaster just to go to choir practice on Thursday nights. Mm-hmm. And my parents were both very, very religious. But they never pressured me, you know, after I moved to Harrisburg. And I just didn't go. Mm-hmm. It just, you know, it was the Reformed Church, First Reformed in Lancaster, which is now the United Church of Christ, and they're very accepting. I mean, of all the churches, they're the most.
Yeah.
And I just haven't gone.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that music was a big part of your life. Did you get involved in any kind of musical groups, or were you?
No.
How did you? Participate in music?
It's always been personal for me.
Okay.
To sit down and calm myself and entertain myself or some of my friends. But I've never played in a group, and I've never played for the public.
Okay. How did you, or when did you learn how to play the piano?
I started playing when I was 5.
Ah.
The organist at our church started teaching me, and I took lessons for 5 years from her. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it was self-taught too. Because I still learn. I hear things on the radio and I say, I don't have that music. I have so much music you would not believe, and I don't know what's going to happen when I go. The music will just go in a dumpster, I guess. But there's access to music online now that you don't have to worry about buying it. Petruccius music site. And I download, if I see something that I want, and if it's public domain and all, you can download it and print it out, and you're playing it within a couple minutes, you know. And I've learned a lot of new things that way.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite type of music? Is it classical? Or is
absolutely. That's all. That's the only thing I have. I have Oklahoma and I have Carousel. I have the score for that. But other than that, everything is classical. Yeah. That's boring, isn't it?
No.
I can play other things, but it just doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite composer?
Richard Strauss. Richard Strauss. The Rosenkavalier is my favorite opera. Next to that is, I don't know. There's so many, all of them, they're good. Any of the Wagnerian operas. He's my third. Mozart second, and
Did you have many opportunities to go to see the live performances at any of the opera?
when I lived, where was I, in Lancaster? No, when I was first moved to Harrisburg, when I was on a buying trip one time, I had tickets for Carmen at the old Met, the old original Met, and I saw the Rosenkavalier there too. And that was just, I think about it now, I'm going to cry. It was just amazing. That was at the old Met. But when I saw Carmen there, they sold me, the only ticket we have is a restricted view. I said, what's that? And he said, well, it's just a partial view. And so I said, well, I'll take it, because it was the last ticket they had. And it's up in the upper balcony, and you're sitting here, and there's a pillar like this right in front of your seat. You had to go like this to see it. But as long as you could hear it, it was good.
Who was singing?
Who was the singer?
Yeah.
Risa Stevens.
All right.
She was still doing it then, in the 50s. Ariadne auf Naxos. That's one of my favorites too, Richard Strauss.
Were there any important events or turning points in your life, would you say? Can you think of anything that was kind of like a major
No.
turning point?
Everything just, to me, is just kind of flowed.
Okay.
It went from one thing to another. Nothing was ever,
Okay. Is there anything else you can think of that you wanted to add?
Absolutely not. There's,
What does he think
I've-
about what's
I've-
been happening in the last 30 years?
Oh, yeah. What do you think about the changes that have occurred in the LGBT community and the acceptance and gay marriage and some of the other things that have happened along the way?
well, I wish I were born now. The kids today just have it so great. It's only getting better.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Jim. We appreciate your time.
I hope I haven't bored you to death.
Not at all, and it's pretty fascinating actually to hear some of the stories about the bar life, especially in Harrisburg and the area here. And I think one of the things that to me is, I don't know if you appreciate the importance of it, but the early bar owners, I think, were really so much the heroes of the community, because they were the ones that stuck their neck out and got into business doing that when it wasn't an easy thing to do. And there was nothing in the community for people to come together around. So it really was an important service.
It was the only place where you could come together.
Exactly.
Other than sleazy places,
Right. It was before any
bathrooms and
before any
what have you.
organizations and before any of that stuff happened.
Yeah.
Bars were really the focus of the community. So it was an important service.
And the bars weren't sleazy. I mean, they were very. Nobody got out of line or anything. It was strictly a place to meet people and drink and have a good time. And, so.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.